All right, folks, welcome back. This is Bold Like a Leopard. Please like, share, and subscribe. A little update to the LeBron James, or should I say LaFraud Shames story, and also talking about Mr. Obama, President Obama's endorsement of Justin Trudeau. So, according to one report from the Daily Caller, LeBron James questioned Adam Silver over the lack of punishment for Daryl Morey's China tweet. And if this is true, it effectively means that LeBron James, beyond his past meddling in other affairs where he's had other players traded away, like he tried to do last year, and I think he ended up doing it with Anthony Davis, what he used to do in Cleveland, getting coaches fired, what he tried to do in Miami and failed to do, getting Eric Spoelstra fired. He's now trying on a league-wide level, if this is true, okay? Let's not jump to conclusions, but to have officials of teams punished for expressing their views on civic issues. This cuts against the very idea of being a social commentator / activist. It is disgraceful. I believe you should be able to say if you are against China or if you support China. Either way, I would probably be on the side of the protesters, to be honest with you. But to say that you can only have one opinion, that's definitely not in the spirit of being a social activist, okay? And generally, unless you're some sort of communist degenerate or something. But look, LeBron James, I think, is bringing to a close an era of mimicking sports activism in the worst way possible. And I'll explain what I mean very simply. When I was a kid, I used to really go to the library all the time and read about people of bygone eras of sports who would have amazing careers both on the field and in activism. And sometimes, the emphasis was more on people performing on the field. There was Joe DiMaggio. Okay, I was probably 30 years too late from seeing Joe DiMaggio actually play on a baseball field. But the guy had the longest hit streak in Major League Baseball. He was just a class act, could hit like no one else, and was responsible for one of the biggest dynasties in baseball history. Joe DiMaggio's effect on the change of society and everything else was very, very small. He didn't really have a big political voice, and therefore he's only really remembered as a superstar athlete, which is fine, because at the end of the day, if you can't perform on the baseball field, really there's no reason people would remember you, but for other reasons, like what happened with Jackie Robinson. Now, Jackie Robinson was a great baseball player. He was also a great example of someone who took a huge risk in order to be able to play baseball as a black person. And that's really the long and the short of it. Jackie Robinson was a great baseball player, but the reason that Jackie Robinson was unique was that once you have the first one, there cannot be another Jackie Robinson. Over here in Cleveland, we had Larry Doby, who was the first American League black baseball player. Look, once the first person gets in, that really is the key. Most people don't remember who Larry Doby is. They just hyped him up over here because he happened to play here, and you could commemorate it more. Obviously, Hank Aaron ended up breaking the home run record. He was also one of the first black players in the league. But the point was that back in the day, these players, especially Jackie Robinson, because for that first season in 1947, he was the only black player in all of Major League Baseball. He took tremendous risks. He was under constant threat all the time, especially if he would travel to a location like St. Louis, where there were people who would probably, try to harm him or harm his family if they were with him. Philadelphia, I believe, was a very hostile destination for his team when they would play there. Jackie Robinson was an amazing activist and player. And the truth is that as the United States has changed, many athletes of today who have been very accomplished have to come to terms with the fact that once their career is over, their significance diminishes very much, right? There were players who were very, very good in the 90s, like Akeem Olajuwon, like Robert Horry, like, for instance, you could say Tim Duncan, who in due time, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, will probably be forgotten, with all due respect to them. If you're talking about in basketball, Curt Schilling, for instance, is trying to keep himself relevant by being a conservative activist. And you see people like, Bernie Williams for the Yankees, right? I'm kind of using baseball players too here, because once a baseball player is done, he kind of gets forgotten. Does anybody remember Wade Boggs? He was getting batting titles all the time. Larry Walker, right? So these players who were very, very good on the field simply get forgotten, unfortunately, because a new generation starts to watch the game. They don't remember these players. So why do some players turn to activism? Because they want their career to be about something a little more significant than stretching a single into a double or winning slam dunk contests. And I can understand to a certain extent the desire for that notoriety. But in reality, once it becomes a choice between making the money, printing that paper, which they have the license to do because they're so well known, they're basically able to print money, they will give up the so-called values that they stood for, which in this case are woke politics, in LeBron James' case, in order to preserve their interests. And here's his statement from today after getting shellacked all over the internet yesterday for what he said.
Try to do things to make my family proud, make my fans proud every time I step out of the house. So that's what, for me, that's what it is.
LeBron, do you get where the criticism comes from, like as complex as the issue is? I think I was trying to ask, do you get where the criticism comes from, like as complex as the issue might be? I think generally it's talking about freedom of speech and human rights issues. How do you kind of process this sort of things?
I don't know. I mean, it's a tough situation that we're all in right now, as an association, as us as athletes, owners, GMs, whatever, so forth. I think, when an issue comes up, if you feel passionate about it or you feel like it's something you want to talk about, then so be it. I also don't think that every issue should be everybody's problem as well. When things come up, there's multiple things that we haven't talked about that happen in our own country that we don't bring up. There's things that happen in my own community that, trying to help my kids graduate high school and go off to college is, what's been my main concern over the last couple of years, in my school. Trying to make sure that the inner city kids that grow up in my hometown can have a brighter future and look at me as an inspiration to get out of the hell hold of the inner city, and we don't talk about those stories enough, but we tend to, want to talk about so many other things as well. So there's issues all over the world, I think that.
So this is classic deflection, and we'll finish his comments in a second, but he's trying to say, well, we don't talk enough about the challenges that I went through and getting out of the inner city. LeBron, you had a blockbuster documentary film. Okay, I forgot what it was called. It was about his time in high school, a high school basketball player. I think it was called forget it. I'm not going to promote a stupid movie, but it was I think it was called More Than a Game. But in any case, people know your story coming from Akron. People have been drilled in the head all through your career that you came from very humble origins. A lot of basketball players come from humble origins. Ron Artest, I believe, even was, he almost got killed or something, or he almost killed a guy, I don't remember. There's a lot of basketball players that have to deal with adversity in order to get where they are, and partially as a result of the environment they grew up in, they never end up learning how to live a stable life. It's a struggle that people who are both athletes and non-athletes have to deal with. So this is deflecting from the real issue, which is greater than your personal problem, which we've already dealt with numerous times, LeBron.
The best thing we can do is, if you feel passionate about it, talk about it. If you're not, if you don't have a lot of knowledge about it, or you don't quite understand it, I don't think you should talk about it, because it just puts you in a tough position. So.
You plan to learn
Last question,
more
please.
about it, just in terms of...
I plan on being here, being the captain of this team, and trying to figure out a way how we can win a championship. That's my main goal right now. I feel like I talked about it yesterday. I tweeted out a couple of responses to people not understanding, my knowledge of what it came from my brain, and for me learning from the situation. I'm talking about it now, and I won't talk about it again, because I'll be cheating my teammates by continuing to harp on something that won't benefit.
So LeBron James has suddenly discovered that the topic of China and whether there is a problem going on over there that would cloud his efforts to promote his shoes and promote, supposedly I heard also that it might be, Clay Travis was floating this possibility. He doesn't want to jeopardize Space Jam, the new garbage version of Space Jam that he's going to be starring in. A movie that was goofy and stupid enough when Michael Jordan was starring in it. That's the real issue. He doesn't want to cloud all of that. Therefore, he's not going to comment on China, but he makes it sound like it's all about the team. Let me tell you something. There is no reason that I would care who wins the NBA championship this year, given the way that these idiots are behaving themselves. And this goes for all of the people. Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, LeBron James, Enes Kanter, I think, even expressed publicly, good for him, that his parents are basically deprived of any of their civil rights back in Turkey, and his brothers and sisters can't even find jobs. And yet some of these morons want to complain about one of the team executives tweeting about China. That is the difference between people who fight to accomplish something and people who pretend that they are activists but are really in it for the sponsorships. And look, I'm sorry. I don't think that every athlete should have to be an activist, but if you make half of your career about activism and about fake belief systems, and then suddenly when it comes to your pocket, you retreat like a friggin' turtle into its shell. No, I think people have a right to disrespect you. And I think the world has woken up to the real LeBron James. And that's why I'm calling him LeFraud James. The other thing that went on today, and I'm not going to belabor the point, I don't want to make this video too long. Obama has endorsed Justin Trudeau. And this is significant for two main reasons, and probably more if I think of them. But the first reason is that Justin Trudeau just went through this ridiculous scandal, the brown face scandal, where he concealed these photos for many years, or in fact, they were in plain sight. It's just the media never deigned to look for them, of himself dressed up as an Indian or some sort of Middle Eastern person with makeup on, his Aladdin costume. And this person was virtue signaling for so many years about how it's wrong to culturally appropriate, and how, we have to be feminists and all sorts of nonsense. The person who fired his attorney general. This is what's so important. People who like to complain about obstruction of justice here in the USA, even when in a legal context, they can't really prove it. Yet with Justin Trudeau, you actually have this clown who did fire his attorney general over an active investigation / potential prosecution. The person that he fired, she was a woman, B, a member of one of the indigenous tribes of British Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. This is Jody Wilson-Raybould. And C, she was also one of the up-and-coming younger members of his party. So Justin Trudeau did obstruct justice. Justin Trudeau did culturally appropriate, if you care about that crap. Justin Trudeau has been basically this stand-in for the fake face of liberalism as it stands in the media, right? It's not even real liberalism anymore. It's basically elitism. And how much more elite can you get than the son of a former prime minister who himself became prime minister based on nothing but his name? And Barack Obama gave him his endorsement, even though Trudeau has done everything possible to prove that he's not worth keeping. People who vote for Justin Trudeau have to remember that this man has botched almost every task that was put in front of him, whether it was just going to India and behaving like a normal person, or deciding whether to extend any benefits to a former Taliban combatant who killed, I believe he killed Canadian soldiers, or was it U.S. soldiers? He also has screwed over veterans. He has essentially proven that he's not really representing Canada. He's representing the Canadian media and the United Nations and everyone but the average Canadian. So I would say it's very, very telling that Barack Obama would endorse him and not even one of the other Canadian leftists who are running. You have two other parties that could potentially be voted for if you're a progressive in Canada. You have the NDP with Jagmeet Singh, who's a Sikh gentleman, and then you also have the Green Party with Elizabeth May, who's kind of a wackaloon too. You don't necessarily have to vote for the Conservative Party, which is the right-wing party over there, or for the Canadian People's Party, I think it's called, or the People's Party of Canada. That's the right-wing Libertarian Party. You don't have to vote for those if you don't like Trudeau. You could vote for one of the other left-wing parties, but that's not good enough for Obama. He's supporting his own stooge, Justin Trudeau. The other significant issue with this is that Obama still hasn't endorsed his own former vice president, Joe Biden, and it's a huge sore thumb in the Democratic primary, and people are making fun of him over it, and rightfully so. And I think in the end, Obama will probably end up cutting ties to Biden entirely. It's even been said that when he decided to run, Obama called up Biden and said, "Joe, you don't have to do this," and was telling him, hey, trying to discourage him from doing it. So, look, I believe in the end, Barack Obama is going to have a real problem deciding who to support in the Democratic primary once his buddy Joe Hairsmeller flatlines. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com, as well as on Subscribestar if you want to donate. You can also find me at Gab. On all three of the first ones, it's at Chef Leopard. On Gab, it's at Starscream85, and I'll talk to you later.